They say the truth is hard to weaponize. They only injured when they telling lies. The devil feel the shame when revolutions finally televised. You've been advised. Crafting narratives incentivized when lies are uplifted. Being candid gets you penalized.
The Supreme Court ruled that the district, which was a majority black district, and it was designed that way as a byproduct of the Voting Rights Act of 1965 that was put in place to protect minority districts from being cracked or split to diminish their collective voting.
Here we are, bro. Good to see you, man.
Yes, sir. You too. Okay, so if you for the people, do you mind introducing yourself?
First, Dr. Earle Fisher, Senior Pastor, Abyssinian Baptist Church in Whitehaven, the blackest church in Memphis and Shelby County, undisputed. Also, the Assistant Professor of Religious Communication and Africana Studies at your alma mater, the Lemoyne College, and inaugural Dean of Chapel, husband of one wife, Denise, father of one son, Jalen. I got a granddaughter named Carter Ann Lil Mama, who calls me Papa. Native of Benton Harbor, Michigan, and founder of Up the Vote 901, a nonpartisan voter empowerment collaborative committed to increasing voter turnout in Memphis and Shelby County in every election and helping to produce more power, information, and representation for the people. So proud of you, brother. Thank you for having me for a few minutes.
Okay, thank you. What an intro. Speaking of alma mater, for the people, real quick, before I get into the meat of the conversation, I don't want to hold you too long. You can tell the people a little bit how we met back in the day.
Well, I thought about this as you were inviting me on here, and I was saying, I'm glad, one, we're not about to be talking about your terrible basketball analysis. And then two, I'm glad that we're not about to be talking about your subpar lyrical analysis with hip hop stuff. But man, we met on the basketball court at Rose College. You were a student there, and I used to go there a couple times a week and show people how to play basketball. And so you were a young whippersnapper at the time. Matter of fact, did you start coming just to play before you started going there? Yeah, so you were still in high school. Mm-hmm. Yeah, was it White Station?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, we had to groom you there, and then you matured. You know what I'm saying? It got your game up, and then you came to Rose and started playing. You know what I'm saying? And then after a while, made the fantastic transition. From the whitest school in the city to the blackest college in the city. Yeah. So man, I'm proud of you too, man. I don't know if I've said this publicly. Of course, I've said it to you personally, but I think it bears repeating on a public forum like this. To see you matriculate through high school, college, dental school, you know what I'm saying, tooth god now, you know what I'm saying. I'm proud of you, brother. And of course, got plenty of love for your dad and your family and stuff like that. So man, it's always good to chop it up with you. But yeah, man, let's talk politics. I don't want to talk.
Let's talk politics. I appreciate that. Yeah. I appreciate it. Yeah. Earl never gives me compliments, so it's good to have
that's cap.
Something nice.
Man, don't get me on here capping.
A nice word in my life.
don't get on here capping. I'm
just saying. But all right. So today, why I brought you here, Dr. Fisher, is to talk about the House, the Senate, and this new 2026 gerrymandering vote. Before we get into the meat and potatoes of the vote, I want to first have you, as someone who's discussed this to me personally. I remember one conversation vividly when we were in the locker room after playing, and you were telling me the importance of voting, and you were kind of breaking down, why local politics matters and things of that nature. So I kind of want you to do a little bit of the same for the people who may be watching. Can you, for the people, break down the Congress, the House, the Senate, and how there's the impact in local politics, especially in these House votes?
Sure, man. I could try to give a quick civics lesson, and I'm gonna do some kind of shameless plugs too, because there's some vital and valuable work that is going on in Memphis and Shelby County to help people like the people in your audience, get more information so that they can better understand the role, the function, and impact of electoral politics, because a lot of our people, and I'm talking about Black people for sure, have just not been made fully aware of what is happening. We've bought some of the lies and some of the myths about what voting is and is not, and we have been suffering the consequences. So for those who don't know, the governmental order that we live in is a representative democracy. It's a democracy because you're supposed to have one person and one vote. And it's a representative government, which is to say you elect people to represent you in the governmental establishment. Because if you're in a country like ours with over 330 million people, then you can't have everybody at everything speaking their individual minds, because ultimately people would get bogged down, and that would just be a very ineffective and inefficient way of trying to govern. So the way that the country has established itself is with what they call a balance of powers. So there are typically several different co-equal branches of government at every level. So co-equal is to say one branch of government does not have more power or authority than any other branch of government. And in the branches of government that are most influential, there are three. So you have an executive office, which is usually a president at the federal level, or it's a governor at a state level. And if you get to a local level, notice I just said three levels: federal, state, local. You might have a mayor. So it might be a county mayor if it's a county, or it might be a city mayor. Then you also have the judicial branch, which is the judges, and you have those at the federal level. So you even have a federal Supreme Court, you have a state Supreme Court, and then at the local level, you have district courts. And then you have a legislative branch of government at the federal level, House and Senate. At the state level, House and Senate. And at the local level, you'll have maybe a city council for a city, or a county commission. If we talk about Memphis and Shelby County, Memphis City Council, where you have 13 districts. You actually have 7 single member districts and 6 super districts. So every person who lives in Memphis has 4 city council people, your single member district council member, and 3 super district council members. If it was in the county, then you have a county board of commissioners, and there are 13 of those, one for every commission district. So that's like the general breakdown of how the governmental structure is. So when it comes to election time, you have people who are usually in one of 2 elections. One would be a primary election, and in a primary election, what you are doing is selecting the person that is going to represent the party in the general election. The general election is when the 2 parties or any independent candidates get on the ballot. Now, you can't say you represent the party at a general election without the party signing off on you after having won a primary election. So what we just experienced in Memphis and Shelby County a couple of weeks ago was the Shelby County primary election, which people were able to pick the people who are going to represent the Democratic or the Republican Party in offices like County Commission, Memphis Shelby County School Board, the mayoral office, and then there are some other offices I think that were up on the ballot then too. In August, there's going to be the Shelby County general election, but at the same time, it's going to be the state and the federal primary election. So you will be selecting between the Democrats and the Republicans in Shelby County, but you will only be selecting for the Democrats or the Republicans at the state level or at the federal level. And then in November will be the final election of the year. It's called the midterm elections because the president has 4 years every term. And in the middle of the 4 years, there is another election called the midterm. So the president won't be on the ballot, but the people who are in the Congress, the federal Congress, so the Senate and the House, those people will be being selected. And in the state of Tennessee, you'll have congressional districts. I know that's what we came to talk about, so I just wanted to kind of get that kind of context. You have congressional districts, and then you're gonna have the mayors and stuff. I mean, the governor will be up too, and then some state and some state senators and some state representatives will be up too.
Okay, that's a great breakdown. That was pretty comprehensive. I like how you gave us all all of the nuances and brought it into terms of Memphis. And speaking of Memphis and the congressional level, I want you to talk a little bit about this 2026 new vote that a lot of people are calling the new gerrymandering vote. I know there's a lawsuit going on between the ACLU. So if you could really quickly give the people a quick synopsis of how this vote could leverage, you know, one party's voting power and basically silence the black vote, which a lot of people are saying splitting Memphis up into a bunch of little mini districts when we're talking about the cracking gerrymandering strategy and et cetera. So if you could give people a quick synopsis of what just happened in 2026 and why there's a lawsuit going on.
So if you don't mind, instead of doing the quick and dirty, I'd like to be a little bit more elaborate, because there are a lot of different things that are happening here. So for those who are watching, especially because part of one of the efforts is with the Black Clergy Collaborative of Memphis, and the Black Clergy Collaborative of Memphis is tasked with a rally that we are hosting June the 7th at 6 p.m. at Mississippi Boulevard Christian Church. And the aim is to help increase voter turnout through massive voter registration and voter education and voter engagement. And we are trying to target especially people ages 18 to 35. So I know several of the people in your age group who are watching this now. If y'all would share this and tag folks who are in that age group, I'm gonna try to be a little bit more elaborate. So if people want to just go back and watch it, then they can go back and catch the gist of it. So for the last several decades, the Shelby County has made up the majority of the Congressional District 9. And so Congressional District 9 is one of 9 congressional districts in the state of Tennessee. Was the one that absorbed the full Shelby County electorate. And it has been represented by Steve Cohen for almost 20 years now. Prior to Steve Cohen, most people might know, the Ford family held that slot down. So you had Harold Ford Sr., Harold Ford Jr. Before you had Cohen. And it was recognized as, and it became this, it was not designated as this, but it became a majority black Congress district, even as it was represented by a white Jewish brother, Steve Cohen. But it was an opportunity for the people in Memphis and Shelby County to come together and unify as a voting bloc. And then they get to pick the candidate that they thought best represented their interest and send that person to DC. So a couple of months ago, some conversation was started because the current president, was concerned that he would lose so many House seats and Senate seats during the midterms. This usually happens, like the governing party or the party that is in power tends to lose. So if there's a Democratic president during the midterms, the Democrats tend to lose seats in the House and the Senate. If it's a Republican president, then the Republicans tend to lose seats in the House and in the Senate. Right. And so the current president, whose name I just refused to mention on your broadcast, he was concerned that they were going to lose, that the Republicans were going to lose seats, and then this could ultimately lead to his impeachment. So he started making calls to some of his constituents in government in the southern states primarily, and telling them that he wanted them to go through the process of redistricting, even though you typically only redistrict after a census, which is done every 10 years. So he wanted to protect the seats that he had in the House and the Senate so that he wouldn't be impeached. And he started calling the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott. He was like, hey, y'all need to call a session. Y'all need to redistrict, and I need a few more seats in Texas to protect. He did the same thing with governor in South Carolina, governor in Florida. And then the Supreme Court was considering a case that is dealing with similarly situated voting blocks in Louisiana, namely New Orleans. And so the Supreme Court ruled that the district, which was a majority black district, and it was designed that way as a byproduct of the Voting Rights Act of 1965 that was put in place to protect minority districts from being cracked or split to diminish their collective voting power. Well, the Supreme Court, with all of these appointees by the current president, ruled to interpret that kind of district as unconstitutional. And so they were saying that no district should be able to be protected based upon race. And not long after that ruling came down, the president called the governor of Tennessee and said, hey, I need some seats in Tennessee. I'm getting some seats in Louisiana. You know, I'm trying to protect my position as president. And so the state legislature convened a special session about 2 weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken. I know one of my church members who is very actively involved in this, Amber Sherman, is on. So Amber can add some of this information in the chat too. And you should get a conversation like this with Amber and others in that arena too. It would be dope. So a couple weeks ago, the state legislature convened a special session with the primary focus and intent of splitting up the District 9 voting block. And despite there being a lot of pushback, despite there being concerns about the legality of it, because again, District 9 was never designated as a minority district in a response to the Civil Rights Act. It actually became a minority district primarily because of white flight. So as white folks were moving out of Memphis and Shelby County for places like DeSoto County, for instance, then white folks would be moving out. The city got blacker and blacker over the years. So the state legislature proposed a map. They got on public record lying and saying that race had nothing to do with it, that they never did any calculations based upon race. It was only based upon demographics. So only based upon party. So they were like reading into, I guess, where they felt like voters leaned Republican. Now, it's also important to note, in the state of Tennessee, you cannot even register with a party. What actually happens is those who do analysis of how the state is made up in terms of party affiliation just go based upon voting record. They can't go to the Tennessee Democratic Party or the Tennessee Republican Party and ask them how many people are on their roster, because that's not how people sign up. So you can't register with a party in the state like that. That's just not how it's done. So of course they were lying under oath, but you know, in a white nationalist and a white supremacist culture and country and state, I mean, who really cares? And so they ended up splitting District 9 into 3 different districts. So now instead of it just being 1 district in Shelby County, there's actually 3 districts. You have District 5, which starts somewhere around the South Memphis, Boxtown, kind of Westwood area. Then it goes up the west side of the city, all the way towards the northern border of Tennessee. So you're heading up Arkansas into the Missouri, kind of like where the state of Tennessee touches Arkansas and Missouri, and then it goes all the way up, then it goes further east, and then it drops back down on the top of, I believe it's Williamson County, where Nashville is. Then you have District 8, which is like in the Poplar Corridor. So it's like the center of the city, and it goes east into the rural counties. And keep in mind, like in District 5, what I was describing, all of the northern kind of like then moving east, all of that stuff is really rural county. Rural, white, heavily Republican leaning county. Same is true in District 8. So in District 8, you have Shelby County, which is overwhelmingly Democratic in how it leans. But now it is coupled with a lot of these rural areas as you go further and further east towards the Nashville area. And then District 9 is Whitehaven, where I live and where my church is. And then it goes through the southern border of Tennessee, across the top of Alabama and Mississippi border. And it goes through a lot of those rural counties, including Giles County, where Pulaski, Tennessee is, which is the home of the Ku Klux Klan. And it keeps going further east, and then it starts to curve up towards Nashville, the bottom of, I think, Williamson County. And so what you have, for those who don't know, the term gerrymander comes from a guy whose last name is pronounced Jerry.
Bro, I don't want to cut you off, but it's like something's muffling your mic real quick. I want you to keep going, but
all right. Have I been muffled for a long time? Do I need to repeat a lot of stuff?
No. Just like
Okay. So the term gerrymander comes from a brother whose name, his last name was pronounced Jerry. He's a northeastern brother, and he put some maps together trying to maintain power for his particular party. And the way he drew the maps were so contorted that they said the shapes looked like salamanders. So they combine the name Jerry with salamander, and that's where you get gerrymander. And so that's what has happened in Tennessee as the Republican Party has sought to diminish the black vote. So now, where there would have been 100% of Shelby County, you have about 29%, or let's just say roughly 30% in each one of the districts. So now 30% of Shelby County is in District 9, 30% of Shelby County is in District 8, and 30% of Shelby County is in District 5. And so that's the way that they split it up.
Okay, and then therefore in doing so, they have 0 places where they have their majority interest being represented solely. It's basically silenced completely. Okay.
Yeah, it could. I won't say it's silenced completely, and that's why we are challenging people to be adequately informed and engaged on the possibility, because a lot of people don't know this. Like, so they built these maps, they gerrymandered the maps, they intentionally wanted to diminish the black vote and the Democratic vote in Shelby County. However, they do it under 2 premises. One is just a flat out lie. They have argued that Tennessee is a ruby red state, which is to say all across the state. So they already had 8 Republican representatives, and then there was 1 Democratic representative. They said they deserve to have all 9, and not just because Trump wants them to get it, but because the state of Tennessee is ruby red. And that's a lie. The numbers show, according to the Independent Voter Project, that the voting trends represent 33% Republican, 18% Democratic, and 48% independent. So that was just a flat out lie. And this idea that the whole state is ruby red and there's no possibility or opportunity for someone of a Democratic or African American background to be fairly represented is just a lie, right? It should be actually more than 1, but we can talk about that, because they did the same thing that they have done in Shelby County. They did it to Williamson County in Nashville several years ago and tried to split, and they split that district up. But the second thing that is faulty in their logic is that the low voter turnout is going to maintain. That's the way that they win. So in 2024, there were 1.7 million people in the state of Tennessee that were registered to vote but just didn't vote. So there were 3 million people who voted, but there were almost 2 million people who didn't. And in Shelby County, there were 300,000 people who voted, but there were 275,000 people who were registered to vote that simply did not vote. And I know some of them are probably on the timeline right now. And so, yeah, I mean, I got people who are now responding to these developments. One of the sisters that's on the live now, Sister Laretha Cotton Thomas, who is actually from Benton Harbor, but has been staying in the Shelby County area maybe even longer than me. She was listening in on our voter empowerment session the other week when we was doing numbers and narratives, and we started talking about people's new district and where you can go. And Amber, if you are still on, or lead a class, I know you on too, Latanya Blankenship, all of y'all who are on, if y'all can grab that, and maybe I can just grab it, I'll put it in the chat. I'm gonna do a link to where people can go and find out their new district. But Laretha Cotton Thomas, her district was changed. She was in District 9, now she's in District 8. You know, I was in District 9, I'm still in District 9. But now there are people like, let's just say, if you live in Boxtown, you were in District 9, but now you're in District 5. And so that's wild. So that's the reality. And I need our people and ask the questions that need to be asked in order to get the information that you need to feel confident in participating in this political process. But do know, to not participate in the process does not give you an advantage, and it is not the flex that a whole lot of our people think it is.
Yes, sir. Okay, I appreciate that clarification. You earlier mentioned the Supreme Court case, Robinson v. Arduin. I think that's the one that was going on in Louisiana. They call it Robinson v.
Nah, it was something. I think it was Louisiana versus Callais.
Yes,
And
Callais
Calais
versus
is spelled
Landry.
like
It
it.
said Callais,
Yes.
Callais versus Landry was the one that led to
Okay.
Robinson versus Arduin.
Okay.
So this is what it says. I can read it for you, and you let me know what you think about these ruling in general, more specific. It says Robinson v. Arduin, and this is, by the way, this is just a Google summary of it, just to make it quicker. Was landmark voting. It said in the 2020, it said Robinson was a landmark voting rights case where civil rights groups sued Louisiana, arguing its post-2020 census congressional map violated Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. Plaintiffs argued that black voters in a single district unlawfully diluted their voting power. They say in 2022, the plaintiffs represented the ACLU and the NAACP challenged the map contained to only one majority black district out of 6, kind of what you were saying. And then they said they had follow-up litigation immediately after the new map was drawn. A different group of voters challenged the new map in Callais versus Landry, alleging it constituted an unconstitutional racial gerrymandering. And so then the Supreme Court permitted the 2-district map to be used for the 2024 elections, and the litigation continued in 2026. So basically, to what you were saying earlier, how do you feel about them, their ruling that there should be no district based on race?
So there's a way. So for those who don't know, my PhD is in rhetoric and communication. And so if I'm doing a analysis of some of the legalese or the legal language, then one of the things I would notice right off is that the only races that are mentioned in more recent rulings are quote unquote minorities. Like, people don't consider their whiteness as a race, even though it functions in that way. And so when they start talking about racial protections, they only criticize the racial protections that have something to do with black or brown or minority groups. But in essence, what is happening with a ruling like this and the subsequent redistricting, which are clearly race-based and anti-black, is that it protects white voters. White district, you can have an all-white district and ain't nobody saying nothing like, oh, you need to split that up. But if you have a majority black district, I didn't say all black, because you probably won't even find an all black district anywhere in the country. But if you have a majority black district, then all of a sudden it needs to be split up because it is a misrepresentation of a constitutional protection. But in order for us to really dig into that, we would probably have to yield to some of the lawyers to talk through some of the preceding cases that have led up to that. But what I can say confidently and with my full chest is that anybody who knows anything about the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 would know that it was put in place out of necessity, because without it, you would have had black folks trying to vote and being told that in order for them to vote, they had to do all of these egregious kind of like methods of counting the number of jelly beans in a jar. And I'm not exaggerating. For those who don't know what I'm quoting right now is literal fact, historical fact. You had to count the number of jelly beans in the jar. You had to say how many bars was in a bubble of soap. You might have to recite the Constitution verbatim for several pages, which 95% of the people who are elected to office today, especially the white ones, could not do.
Right.
So without that, these were protections that were being put in place to give black folks equitable access to the ballot box, because we were tired of taxation without representation. And since it passed in 65, there have always been people trying to get it undone. And so it has been chipped away at for the last several decades. And now with the supermajority in the state house in Tennessee, supermajority in the federal government, because you have majority Republican House, majority Republican Senate, and a Republican president, then the president over the last several years has made some very crucial appointments to the Supreme Court. So now the majority of those on the Supreme Court have been appointed by Republican presidents. So what you have now is just like them running a Boston. For those who went to HBCUs and played spades, you know what a Boston is. That's where
Right,
you get
right.
all of the books in spades. Anyway.
Yes, sir. Okay. No, I appreciate that information. I have another question for you. Speaking of kind of touching on one thing you were mentioning about something the Republicans are doing when they were splitting up Memphis into 3 different districts instead of having it contained as one. In the ACLU lawsuit, they say Senator London Lamar, when asking Senator John Stevens, who attended University of Memphis, if he knew that Memphis was a predominantly black city, and he says no, and the only thing is to maximize partisan advantage. I want to ask you a question, because we've seen this kind of feign of stupidity or feign of ignorance strategy of the Republican Party in many different folds now publicly. It seems like this is all a big charade, even if it's Pam Bondi with the Epstein files. It's just this whole constant Cash Patel, John Stevens. What do you think is a way that people can combat this strategy, if any? And what do you think, the power lies when people are just taking this blatant, I'm just going to say, I don't know anything, it wasn't me, type of strategy when presented with evidence?
Yeah, I think if you have a court system set up the way that we just described, and people need to know courts don't fall out of the sky in whole cloth. Like, part of the reason some of us have the rights and privileges that we do have is because there have been judges that have been appointed, sometimes by Republicans and sometimes by Democrats, but appointed in a way where they were being fair and open and honest in their interpretation of the law. Whereby there are other judges who are much more partisan, and they would allow somebody in their party to plead ignorance or to feign ignorance, even under oath. But if we don't understand the long arc of legal precedent and legal cases, that you might not win the first time you appear before a judge on a particular case, but you might get something entered into the legal record and the public record that another lawyer will use on down the line that can help advance your cause. Like, we have surrendered so much political power because we've bought the lie that the vote does not matter. And we actually think that that's some novel kind of like clandestine intelligence that we've gotten from somebody. And now, we think we're going to school everybody who, was been participating in the vote. And then, so that's just kind of sad. And that's one of the reasons we are at such a disadvantage, and they are able to run the table like they've been running it. But not only that, when we don't engage long enough, even those of us who have participated, if you don't engage long enough over an extended period of time, then you won't be around in those midterm elections or in those other elections to help someone get into office and be appointed by the right people. So we've surrendered so much stuff from the judicial branch because we've been taught that the only important position was the president.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, I don't want to hold you too long. I want to get to a couple more things, a little bit more lighthearted things. What are your thoughts? I saw in the protest.
Now look, don't bring up no hoop stuff, and don't bring up no Drake stuff.
It's not basketball related. It's not basketball related.
Okay.
It's not basketball related. I said in the protest, I saw they had Representative Justin Pearson out there a lot. I wanted to get your thoughts on Justin Pearson because he's going viral a lot. Do you think he can be a new voice for the young youth to get more people engaged in politics in Memphis, or what are your overall thoughts on him? And that's kind of the question. Yeah.
So since part of what we're trying to do is engage people 18 to 35, I know that this is your invitation to me
But I want to ask you, how do you feel about Justin Pearson? I think your feelings of Representative Pearson are as valuable, if not even more valuable than mine. So tell me how you. I don't. I will say how I feel about him, and I think most people who know me know how I feel about him. I mean, he's been a good brother that I've done some work with, and we've done some advocacy work together on a lot of fronts. He's been by Abyssinian to preach, a couple times. So I mean, I think he's cool, and I think he's a wonderful voice. I think he is somebody who represents a kind of new wave and populism. He's definitely courageous. He's definitely conscious. He's up on the issues, and I think he would make a wonderful addition to the Congress, the United States Congress. And that is not to throw shade on anybody else running against him. That's not to say that he is the only one, but he's definitely in a particular class, in a unique class, when you start looking at what's happening in the state of Tennessee. And if you start looking at like establishment politics, so if you look at somebody like Cory Booker, for instance, right? Like he would probably not be a Cory Booker kind of politician. He is much more in the AOC, for those who are familiar with the squad. Like I think several people in the squad have endorsed him. But again, that's my take on it. I'm curious. I want to hear from you. I think it's important for people to hear from you, like how you feel about him and how people in your network and your circle feel about
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't get too long-winded on him because I haven't really dug too deep into a lot of things he's done. Personally, for me, how I've consumed his digital or online personality, which is the main way that I've consumed his content, is basically in speeches, which I thought, all sounded good. He seems like a guy who's young, charismatic, who cares. I've heard some people kind of think he's a little over the top, and maybe his presentation may be a little dramatic. But, I don't really think that's too big of a deal in politics. There's always going to be some type of level of performance, I feel like, in politics. But that doesn't really take away from him to me much. So yeah, I mean, I don't have anything negative to say about him. Like I said, the only thing I've seen people kind of laugh at is kind of his performative nature. But I think that's just the nature of being a politician. But he seems like someone young, charismatic, who cares. So I'm for him, So that's my 2 cents on it.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see, more of y'all too, like engaged, not just his social media content, but look at his platform, look at other candidates and their platform. London Lamar is running. She's also a younger sister. She's a state senator. She's running in the same district. And then you got candidates in District 8 and District 5. And, there should be some times over the next few weeks and months going into the primary. And one, I want to say this to dispel, I mentioned the breakdown of the primary election earlier. But I think for a lot of people, they don't understand that format well enough to know that if there are two black people running in a primary election, that is not splitting the black vote.
Okay. That makes a lot of
Splitting the
sense.
black vote is when you have several black candidates and one white candidate in a general election.
Mm.
But in a primary election, all you're doing is trying to figure out who the party picks to run in the general election on behalf of the party. So, for those who might be thinking that London Lamar is splitting the black vote because Justin Pearson was campaigning in District 9 even before it got split, she is not splitting the black vote. It is well within her right to run. But I'm encouraging people like you to go look at their platforms, go look at their personalities, go look at their policies, and figure out who you think would be best suited to represent this district, or whether if you are in District 9, and of course I'm saying in this district, but other elected officials too. But beyond any of the personalities, it is incumbent upon us to make sure we are adequately informed and challenging candidates to represent us, even if they are not the one that we vote for in the primary.
Now that makes a lot of sense, and I like how you kind of redirected even who you're choosing as a candidate back to the policy, because sometimes I think a lot of people get too wrapped up in a personality and don't focus enough on the policy, which is going to be way more impactful in your life than however they present themselves in a personal manner. I have one last question. It's only semi basketball related, but not completely.
Oh my. No, just play.
So,
Come on. What's up, man?
when the whole LeBron talk about moving the Grizzlies, I wanted you to kind of touch on the impact politically of the Memphis Grizzlies in the city of Memphis, economically, and what that really would do in that type of impact field, kind of away from the court. I think he was kind of saying it flippantly, and they're all talking about Memphis, but I think some people are not understanding the actual impact of the city, of the team on the city. So I kind of wanted your thoughts on that to touch on a little bit more.
Yeah, I think one, he was extremely flippant when he made those remarks. I know he tried to backtrack on them a little bit, but I wish, and this, Akil, because I was an athlete, student athlete, and I tried to maintain a level of consciousness even during my collegiate years, but since I've been following college and professional sports, I've always longed for a kind of representation, a kind of pro-black, a kind of enlightened perspective from some of the athletes. And I know that might be a bit naive on my part, or aspiration. I ain't gonna say naive, it's a bit aspirational on my part. So for him to make that kind of statement and say explicitly they should move to Nashville is something that can speak to the type of funding and the economic resources that come through public policy, because you don't get a team like the Grizzlies or a facility like the FedEx Forum without getting some financial resources from governmental entities, federal, state, and local, which means you have to have people in political office that give you support. And if you mess around and get the wrong people in that office and they don't have a vested interest in the financial well-being of a city like Memphis, they can easily start advocating for the team and those facilities and those resources to be redirected to somewhere else. I'm from Michigan. I'm from Benton Harbor, Michigan. That's on the southwest corner of Michigan. It's closer to Chicago than it is Detroit. But I remember when I was growing up in the 90s, the Detroit Pistons did not play in downtown Detroit. They played in the Palace of Auburn Hills, hella white. See, and you mess around and get the wrong people in office, and then they start listening to somebody like LeBron, and whether he meant it this way or not, they will take, this, Akil, they'll take that soundbite and they'll use it as a pretext to justify a political and policy-oriented maneuver and redirect federal funds away from a place like Memphis and say, you need to put it in the suburbs of Nashville.
Right. Right. No, that's I like that you said that. I like how you broke it down a little bit more than me, because that was my similar sentiment. I think LeBron was kind of making the comments, and a lot of people are, making the comments about the city and talking about the hotel business. But I think, there's a quite different tone when you're just criticizing the hotel situation versus advocating literally to move a city, which, as you said, is really vital right now to, a lot going on. And like you said, it takes a lot of government support just to have these teams going on. I think a lot of people don't connect those two, the sports business, with how much public policy and, politics are involved in things like the sports teams. So I like how you wrap that in there. Okay. Yeah. Well, that's
look, man. Let me thank you.
Huh?
Let me thank you. I appreciate this, man. And again, I hope you do more of these with people ages 18 to 35. I'm 47. I'll be 48 in September, so I'm getting over the hill. But I can still shoot, So I can still outshoot you. I mean, I've always been able to outshoot you. Okay. But definitely do this. For those who want more information, you can always follow Up the Vote 901 on Facebook and Instagram. I'm actually putting a link to it in the comment section. We will be hosting, again, on behalf of the Black Clergy Collaborative of Memphis, founded by my dear brother, Reverend Dr. Jason Lawrence Turner, who is senior pastor at Mississippi Boulevard Christian Church. We'll have that Souls to the Polls
voter empowerment and engagement event on June the 7th at 6 p.m. at Mississippi Boulevard Christian Church. And on June the 27th, which is a Saturday, it's the last Saturday of the month, we'll have Up the Vote 901's next voter empowerment session at Abyssinian Baptist Church in Whitehaven, 3890 Mill Branch, 38116. And that topic will be Black Civics 101. So a lot of what I said today, y'all can come have some direct conversation and dialogue with our constituents and some of the people who can share more information. And the more information you have, the more likely you are to get engaged. But y'all, please help us increase voter turnout in Memphis and Shelby County and across the state of Tennessee. Hopefully we can get to 50% in August and 75% in November. But we can't do it without y'all's help and support. There are 275,000 people that sat out in Shelby County. Y'all know some of them. I know some of them. I'm sure some around Abyssinian and then around Whitehaven. And I'm going to do what I can to try to engage up to 10,000 of them. I want to get 10,000 people who sat out in 2024 to participate in 2026. But there's still 265,000 out there. So some of y'all need to get y'all 10,000 too. Now, I got a question for you before I log off, okay?
Yes, sir.
Who you got in the finals, bro? I'm going to let you talk a little basketball. Who you got in the finals?
Well,
We getting lighthearted on this. Who you got in the finals?
I mean, like, who I got winning it? I got whoever's coming out the West to win. And I think,
Okay.
even though I want the Spurs to win, I feel like this may be that 1 year where you bump your head. I just feel like most young teams, the first year, you always bump your head, whether it's OKC against the Mavericks and then they come back and win it, or whoever. It's usually the first team, the young team, bumps their head, so I don't see them winning. And so that's what I got. I got OKC repeated.
Okay. I think that's a reasonable one. That's a reasonable one. Laretha, it is 275,000. I'm saying I'm gonna count myself for 10,000, and that will leave 265,000 left. So you get your 10,000, then there'll be 255,000. Okay. And then Akil get his 10,000. There's gonna be 245,000. Yeah, I ain't playing with y'all. Y'all have to step up. Everybody got to step up. Okay.
Right.
That's why I came on this live.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Well, but yeah, man, I think you're right about the hoops tip. I think it's probably gonna pan out that way. And but I will say this has been a beautiful thing to watch some high level basketball in the Western Conference Finals.
Right.
Because that Eastern Conference Finals, man, vintage James Harden. I mean, every year his season ends tragically. So shame on him. Before we log off, bro, thanks again. Salute to you. Salute to your family. Salute to your practice. And who won the beef, Drake or Kendrick?
I got to
Bye, man. Bye, no.
I ain't even gonna get into it. But anyway, yes, you guys go support Earle everywhere. I will be reposting this on my channel as well. I'll also be reposting it on my page. The live will be here on Facebook, but I'll also repost it on my channel. My YouTube channel is called King Akil. I do a lot of things there, music reactions, some interviews. You guys will have to check out the other content, but I have an interview with Jules Chappelle talking about Dr. Cheyenne Bryant. And I want to do more of these conversations, picking brains of people who know a lot about certain subjects. And I want to, talk to Earle today because he always has a lot of information about voting and politics and things of that nature. So I appreciate you sharing your expertise.
I love, brother. Do me a favor. Go back to edit your caption and tag Up the Vote 901 page on there so I can share this on the Up the Vote page too.
Okay, I got you. Yes, sir.
All right. Appreciate it, brother. Peace, y'all.
All right, no problem.
So yeah, man, that was Reverend, Doctor, Pastor, Earle Fisher. So many titles, so many superlatives, well deserved. Very active as far as a social activist in the Memphis community. Go ahead and check out Up the Vote 901. He's very big into that, a part of that, helping people register to vote and understand their voting rights. Also, go ahead and check out his new article on the Tennessee Lookout, where he talks about Freedom Summer 2.0, Tennessee and the Redemption of Democratic Possibility, and talking about how the red states have been kind of deemed perpetually red, such as Tennessee, whereas if you look at the actual voting numbers in terms of who's not voting and things of that nature, the state very well could flip if people understood their voting rights. And so very informative article.
make sure you check that out. Go check out what they're doing in Up the Vote 901. Many different get-togethers they do where they're teaching people in the community, really out there doing the work. Check him at the Abyssinian Church, where he's the pastor on, as he says, the blackest church in Memphis. And so he's really into actually putting the boots on the ground and doing the work of the people. So go ahead and check out Dr. Fisher. I appreciate him blessing us with that interview. And yeah, we're on our road to 1,000 subscribers. We're already over 800. I appreciate you guys so much for all the love and support. Again, just trying to give real commentary, real reactions, genuine conversations to bring to the ethos of the internet. So I appreciate you guys. If you haven't, please like, comment, subscribe, share the video. It really helps me out. Just a small creator from Memphis trying to share some insight on the city. And yeah, this is King I Kill, and I'm out.
They say the truth is hard to weaponize. They only injure when they telling lies. The devil feel the shame when revolutions finally televised. You've been advised. Crafting narratives, incentivized when lies are uplifted. Being candid gets you penalized.